Hey everybody. So today I'm reading another excerpt from Chapter 3 of A Christian Case Against Donald Trump, which is available on Amazon at the link below. Chapter 3 is called The Way of Truth versus the Way of the Deceiver. Why Trump has to destroy the idea of truth. Like all demagogues and strongmen, Trump prefers to control his followers rather than to lead them. So he creates an alternate universe of twisted facts and incomprehensible logic. Then he repeats those false claims and arguments ad infinitum. He's not content to merely fool his people. He seeks to become their sole source of truth. He seeks to own their intellect, to mold their very perception of reality. Ultimately, he seeks to shape them into an unquestioning weapon in his quest for personal power and wealth. Many politicians tell lies, but not like Trump, and not like the newer crop of MAGA Republicans who've taken control of the party by adopting Trump's strategies. When most politicians get caught in a lie, it's because they're covering up an inconvenient truth about themselves, or they're trying to distort their opponent's record to gain an advantage. This is wrong in and of itself, and it ought to be rejected in our politics. But like all of Trump's political strategies, his use of lies and distortions differs, both in degree and in kind, from any other American candidate for president. Trump isn't fudging a few facts around the edges. He's intentionally obliterating the very idea of independent facts, meaning any facts that exist outside of his own ever-shifting version of the truth. Chances are that some of my readers will say, well, every politician lies. Trump is no different. Others might respond, I gave up long ago. I've opposed Trump's lies for so long that I'm exhausted. He's worn me out. These statements reflect the damage that Trump's relentless, sustained assault on reality has done to both his voters and his opponents. Yet, the people who should care the most about truth, his Christian supporters, have been his strongest defenders. I'm not interested in proving to my readers that Trump lies. Frankly, it offends me to have to play that game in my daily life with people who claim to have the Spirit of God. One of Trump's tactics is to get people like me wasting my time and energy proving the obvious on multiple fronts to people who just refuse to admit what they already know. But examples can be helpful to illustrate how he operates. For instance, on July 31st, 2024, Trump sat for an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists. He told many of his usual lies in that interview and then debuted a new one about Kamala Harris, one that harkens back to his birther lie about Barack Obama. Rachel Scott, a reporter for ABC, asked Trump if he thought Harris had been chosen for the ticket only because she's a black woman.
You believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear.
Now, this attack combines a straight-up lie with Trump's familiar strategy from the last chapter of baiting his opponents into a reaction that he can exploit. In this case, he's begging them to call him a racist so he can play the victim and make them appear, quote-unquote, shrill. Instead, Rachel Scott simply corrected him. She reminded him that Kamala Harris has always identified as black and that she attended Howard, a historically black university. It's possible but doubtful that Trump didn't realize a person could identify as more than one ethnicity. But then she calmly asked him the question again. Later that night, Kamala Harris had the opportunity to respond during a speech to Sigma Gamma Rho, a black sorority. She'd joined a black sorority herself in college and has spoken for years about her love for these organizations. And rather than play Trump's outrage game, she calmly referred to his comments as the same old show. And then she said, the American people deserve better. Now that's how to defeat a deceitful demagogue. Tell the truth, but don't take the bait. And keep going. Always keep going in the hope that truth will triumph in the end. Trump chose to build his political movement on a false and ugly version of reality. It's all he knows how to do, so he tries to prop up that false reality every day. His greatest political vulnerability is that his followers might realize someday that most of what he says is utter nonsense, often dark and twisted, sometimes sensational, but utter nonsense all the same. To a movement grounded in nonsense, objective truth poses the gravest threat of all. So Trump must destroy the very idea of truth at any cost. And when Christians vote for Trump, we endorse his intentional destruction of truth. Look at the politicians the MAGA movement has elevated in recent years. Look at the liars Trump chose to speak at the Republican National Convention this summer. Compare them to the truth tellers who've been driven out of the Republican Party. Look at the corrupt Christian leaders who support Trump and the division that's come into churches and families because of his lies and abuse. Take an honest look at every institution that's chosen to align with Trump, from churches to the GOP. We all see the rot, don't we? Trump dissolves the conscience of every institution that embraces him, and ultimately every person who supports him, Christians most of all. Lindsey Graham understood this back in the before times. I highly recommend Will Salatin's in-depth report for The Bulwark called The Corruption of Lindsey Graham, a case study in the rise of authoritarianism. It's depressing, shocking, and a must-read for anyone who wants to see in detail what an autopsy of conscience looks like in a powerful politician who used to know better. Graham has become one of Trump's most loyal supporters, but he used to say things like this from an event in Portsmouth, Massachusetts in 2015.
If he continues to do what he's doing, he's destroying the party. There'll be a generation before we can overcome this, maybe never. So I'm not afraid of him. I'm not afraid of him leaving. You know what I'm afraid of? That we're afraid of him leaving. Let your fear go, folks, as Republicans. Tell Donald Trump you're wrong. Don't be afraid of him leaving and losing an election. I'm not afraid of losing an election. I'm afraid of losing our soul.
Will Salatin's report on Lindsey Graham proves that Graham always knew the truth about Trump. He's spoken the truth many times in the past. He even understands the danger our support for Trump poses to the soul. That's why Graham's years-long, excruciatingly public moral debasement has been so astounding and tragic. J.D. Vance also seems to have understood Trump years ago. Although unlike Graham, Vance shows little evidence of ever having held a sincere moral conviction. He does write well, though, and he wrote this back in 2016. Trump's promises are the needle in America's collective vein. The great tragedy is that many of the problems Trump identifies are real, and so many of the hurts he exploits demand serious thought and measured action. Trump is cultural heroin. He makes some feel better for a bit, but he cannot fix what ails them, and one day they'll realize it. That's only one of many critical things that Vance said about Trump back then, but when Trump won and began to assert his dominance over the GOP, Vance's ambition kicked in. He changed his tune, and now he's been welcomed onto the presidential ticket by the very man that he once said might be America's Hitler. Lindsey Graham's and J.D. Vance's stories make it clear. To those who've lost their moorings in the way of Jesus, the choice is no longer between truth and lies. It's between truth and power. And in choosing power over truth, they've revealed themselves to be common, weak men. That choice has set each of them on a path of ever more dishonest service to Trump. And make no mistake, Trump has brought both of these men into his circle not in spite of their former opposition, but because they've changed their tune in such humiliating fashion. They've publicly sacrificed their honor and self-respect, thus proving their loyalty to power over truth. And that makes them valuable to a man like the former president. Donald Trump spews his fire hose of lies for a reason. He wants all who follow him to debase themselves in the same way Graham and Vance have done. He's been grooming his Christian followers to accept a little more debasement every day. I said earlier that Trump uses the same tactics cult leaders use. I always want to be careful not to paint with such a broad brush that I'm labeling everyday Trump voters as part of a cult. That would be unfair. But here's what I know. If you plan to vote for Trump in 2024, but you're reading this book, you're doing the hard work of wrestling with your conscience over that decision. I think you agree with me that Trump does attack the very idea of truth. The evidence is overwhelming. So if you choose to support him in the end, it will be for other reasons. I'm guessing you would say you're not choosing lies over truth. You'd prefer that Trump didn't lie, but the fact remains, in the end, you're not choosing truth. You're choosing power over truth. If you plan to vote for Trump, you must have decided that's a necessary trade-off, that keeping the power in the hands of your own people will lead to a better future. And I'm pleading with you to reconsider. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Walking in the way of truth is an essential part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. He never tells us to seize power, but he always tells us to walk in truth. Truth is our saltiness. Truth is our light. If we trade our truth for power, we have nothing of value left to offer the world. All right, as always, if you found this video helpful, please share it with somebody. And if you buy the book, please leave a review on Amazon. And thanks for listening.